Yesterday, I asked Pronunciation Studio followers on social media this question about the pronunciation of the ending in happy, and these are the results from over 1,500 replies. I must admit, I was surprised by how even the voting was, and I was even more surprised that the third one was most popular. But which one, if any, is right? Let's have a look. This is the transcription you'll find in the Oxford English Dictionary. But there is a small problem with it. It's wrong. So why is it wrong? Well, put simply, if you write a phonemic transcription, that's one that appears between these two lines, you can only use the 44 phonemes of English, which includes the following 20 vowel sounds. You'll notice that E is not there. We have a long E and a short I. The phonemic principle is one symbol for one sound. You can't change these symbols in a phonemic transcription. So although most people familiar with modern British pronunciations find this short E sounds right, happy, after all, it's the same mouth position as long E. We can't just go and remove length marks where we feel like it. It's against the rules. Which brings us on to the second transcription. This one doesn't have the same problem. The phoneme used for the Y ending is definitely included in the 44 English sounds. So all is good, right? Well, no. There's a pretty obvious and enormous problem now in the shape of those length marks. It looks like this word should be pronounced ʻhapiː. If all learners understood before they open a dictionary that the phonemes can have allophones, so length marks don't necessarily mean long, it would still be a ridiculous visual representation of the word. Phonemic transcriptions are supposed to help people pronounce words, not make them appear totally different to their actual pronunciations. I personally don't fancy trying to convince millions of learners not to trust length marks. There's already enough uncertainty in the world. So whilst you could argue this version fits nicely into the phonemic alphabet and also accurately shows the mouth position, it does terribly at helping us to pronounce the word correctly, because the length is all wrong. So you could say it fails in its most basic goal. Those length marks ruin everything. Which brings us onto the third transcription. If you listen to this fella say happy, it's probably going to sound something like this. Happy. Because he's using an old-fashioned vowel system. In the olden days of proper BBC pronunciation, the ending was more open. In many regional accents these days, particularly in the north, this pronunciation is still used. This chap would say ʻhapi. So is there a case for using the I symbol instead? After all, we could argue that E is then an allophone of I. And best of all, they are both short. Job well done. But then there's another problem. We are using a symbol which gives a different position of the mouth. I. It's lower, and we're hoping that learners understand that it's actually not pronounced like that at all, unless you are aiming to sound like King Charles or Liam Gallagher. So although the I symbol wins at both length and phonemic validity, it absolutely fails to show us the modern mouth position. I don't fancy trying to convince millions of learners that the vowel symbols actually relate to different sounds. There's too much ambiguity in the world for that. So as you can see, all three of these transcriptions are flawed in one way or another. The most accurate looking one is the first. It appears to match what I say. The most accurate phonemically is probably the third, though ending a syllable with I is strange, especially if it doesn't reflect the actual pronunciation. And number 2, E, just looks wrong. So at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves what transcription is for, if not to help people pronounce words accurately. So my choice as a language teacher is to bend the rules a bit. The least worst option, see what I did there, is to go with the first, even if it does make purists, well, unhappy.